Let's talk about flyouts. Creating flyouts in MA3 requires a few more clicks than creating flyouts in MA2, but as all things MA3 tend to be, the extent of what you can achieve with flyout phasers is much greater. Let's start out by building a basic tilt-dim flyout. I'll select my group of Rivalis, and first I'll build my dimmer half. So I'll set my dimmer to 100, move to step 2, and set my dimmer to 0. I'll then open my phaser editor, set my form to a sine wave, set my measure to 2, set my step 2 width to 66, and set my step 1 width to 33. I'll move back to step 2 and set my transition value to 50. As you can see, this dimmer cycle occupies 2/3 of the phaser cycle. I'll exit the phaser editor and type store universal into slot 101 in my all pool. I'll then clear out, select my Rivalis again, and build my tilt phaser. Something worth note is when you're building any movement phaser for a flyout, whichever preset you select first is where the flyout will end. So if I select tilt relative plus 45 first, my flyout will end at plus 45, and vice versa for minus 45. I want to build a flyout, so I want to end at higher values. So first I'll select the plus 45, then I'll move to step 2 and select minus 45. I'll enter my phaser editor, apply the sine wave form, set a measure of 2, and this time I'll invert my width values. So my step 2 width will be 33, my step 1 width will be 66. And I'll leave this as is. This will work. I'll store universal this into slot 102. Now if I take my group of Rivalis and apply both of these phasers, you'll see that we have the start of a flyout. I'll clear out, hit the add symbol, hit edit recipe, click my group, apply both these phasers, and swipe and store into a new preset slot. I'll clear out, and as you can see, if we ask to remove the recipe edit function, click my group, and apply this, we are now getting the full flyout in one click. If I swipe on this box, scroll over, apply X swings of 2, set my phase to X to 180, and swap the phase, apply it, I'm now getting a pretty convincing flyout look. The next thing I want to do is I want to make this more than just a dim tilt. I want to add a pan attribute. So I'll clear out, select my Rivali group, set my pan relative to negative 30, move to step 2, and set my pan relative to 0. I'll enter the phaser editor again, set a sine wave form, set my measure to 2, step 2 width of 33, step 1 width of 66, exit, store universal to slot 103. I'll clear out, enter my recipe preset, duplicate the second line, and swap the values to my pan. Also scroll over to where it says phaser transform, hit mirror, and that's it. If I apply this effect to my group, you'll see I'll now get a tilt and pan flyout. So the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the amount of time it takes for the movement within this phaser cycle. So I'll clear out, I'll right-click the tilt phaser, enter the phaser editor, and on step 1, I'll set my transition to 50. I'll exit, click Update, OK. I'll do the same thing for my pan. If I reapply this effect, you'll see that it now moves faster, but the flyout still is the same amount of time within the phaser cycle. This is just one variation if this is the look you're going for. So I'll clear out, and the next thing I want to do is turn this into a bidirectional flyout. So I will right-click on my tilt phaser, open the phaser editor, select both steps, and set my width to 50. I'll also set both of my transitions to 50. I'll then hit Update and do the same thing to my pan. I'll also enter my dimmer phaser, and I'll select both steps, set my width to 50, and change it to a PWM form. I'll hit Update, OK, and clear. If I select my group and apply this effect as is, it doesn't look that different. However, if I clear out, enter my recipe preset, select both movement lines, and set my speed from X to 30, which is now half the default speed, and I'll enter 60 on that line just for safety. and also half my phase from X, you'll see that if I apply it, the phaser will now move both directions. Let's go back into the recipe preset and slow this down by about 50%. So I'll set my dimmer speed to 30 and both my movements to 15. That's a little more my tempo. I then want to smooth my dimmer back out. So right now, the dimmer occupies half a phaser cycle. So I'll clear out, enter my dimmer, enter the phaser editor, set my step 1 width to 40, set my step 2 width to 60, and I'll set my step 2 transition to 17.5 and my step 1 transition to 25. This shape is now comparable to MA2's default flyout form for the dimmer. I'll then hit Update, OK, and I'll reapply the phaser. Let's apply some gobos. And there you go. That's how to create both a unidirectional and bidirectional flyout and adjust the settings to your liking.